Now we've got website FAQ number 2. Does the thylacine still exist? So this is a big question, of course. This is the one everybody wants answered. Does the thylacine still exist? Now, what I'd ask is, why do people want that answer? You know, why ask the question? Is it just a passing curiosity, or do people actually want to help this animal? Now, what it says, if you want to help it, then don't listen to what I say. Don't listen to what some expert says if they tell you it's extinct. Do a bit of digging yourself to find this, to answer this question. Now, I promise, it's important, and I promise, the more you look, the more you'll see. Anyway, there's a fair bit to answer with this question, so I've written it down. So, to start answering it, we currently do not have proof the thylacine still exists. So until somebody obtains proof, then it remains an open question. That's an open question. It's not a closed question. The thylacine obviously did exist to recent times. So where did the idea come from that it's extinct? Now, up until the 1980s, it was generally accepted that in Tasmania that the thylacine might still exist. This is an important part of history to help explain all of this crazy stuff. In the 1980s, there was a turning point. Before that, everybody sort of thought, it might still be there. But in the 1980s, the government mood changed. There was the introduction of wide-scale logging for wood chips in Tasmania. Expanded logging was seen as an important source of new revenue for schools and hospitals, but the government also understood that rediscovery of the thylacine could trigger the collapse of the entire industry. A Parks and Wildlife Ranger said he saw a thylacine in 1982, right in the middle of a logging area. So you can imagine the pressure the government was under. Thylacine information was systematically suppressed from that point onward to keep a lid on this growing can of worms. The media was manipulated to create the public perception the thylacine was extinct. The Tasmanian government officially declared it extinct in 1986. Now that's only 4 years after one of their own people said he saw one. And at that time, which is 1982, the head of the Parks and Wildlife Service said it's the best sighting in the history of the service, and it's irrefutable. So they believed it then, that it existed. 4 years later, the Tasmanian government declared the thylacine extinct. Now by the year 2000, so say 10, 20 years later, there was little interest in the thylacine because it was extinct. At that time, a book was written by Robert Paddle called The Last Tasmanian Tiger. That's it there. The Last Tasmanian Tiger. This is a pivotal book in the history of the thylacine. Robert Paddle made the arrogant claim the thylacine went extinct in 1936 when the last one died in the Hobart Zoo. Before that, nobody had said that. He said it. He said it. It went extinct in 1936 when the last one died in the zoo. For the next 10 years, everybody seemed to use that as an excuse to give up on the Tasmanian tiger. There was no need to worry about it anymore because it was scientifically shown, a fairly well written book, it was scientifically shown to be extinct. Now most of the so-called experts derive their extinction belief, their expertise, simply by reading that book. They haven't done anything else. And none of these naysaying experts have actually looked for the thylacine in the bush. Some have never even been to Tasmania. And we know their names. We know the names of these people, but what I keep saying is, who are they? You know, who are these people? If you're going to believe what someone says, that the thylacine is extinct, well, you've got to understand what qualifications do they have to make that claim. Now, Paddle's book has been, the problem with Robert Paddle's book is that he himself actually never looked for the thylacine in the bush. He never set foot in the bush to look for it. He also didn't have any interest in anything after 1936. So all the sighting reports, all the suggestions that it was still there, Robert Paddle didn't consider any of it. Now that book has since been discredited. It was discredited 10 years ago. But experts still push this line that it went extinct in 1936. The media keep repeating the same thing, and the public ends up believing it. Now we might as well give up on the Tasmanian tiger because it's extinct. And 30-second Facebook opinions repeat the same thing all over the internet. Now it's true, there are a couple of good questions within that to answer. If it still exists, then why hasn't a thylacine been photographed or captured after all this time? Now I don't know. It's a good question. It's an excellent question. I don't know, but that doesn't mean it's extinct just because you haven't seen it. There's plenty of remote bush where a small population of thylacines could still survive without being detected. So it's plausible. There's nothing that says just because we haven't seen it all this time that it must be extinct. The fact that nobody's proven it exists yet is not a reason to give up on the thylacine. Instead, it's a reason to fight for it. The longer this thing remains undetected, the more incredible the story becomes. And the more its rediscovery would shock the world. So it could be that a monumental story is waiting to be told, if somebody only has the endurance to make it happen. The more, it's like a mountain. The higher you climb, the greater the reward at the top. You see? So the more ridiculous this story becomes, the greater the reason to tell the story. Now, thylacine might be extinct, but we don't know that. And nobody can prove that. And plenty of honest people are saying they've seen it. So why would we sit back and assume it's extinct? Now, I myself have been asked, what will it take for me to accept the thylacine is extinct? Now, I didn't have an answer for that initially, but I've since had time to think about it. Now, on one hand, I've got 1,500 sighting reports, honest people who say that they've seen a thylacine. There's plenty of reasons why it could still be there, and actual science is saying there's still a small chance to save this iconic Australian species. And that will shock the world. That's what's in that hand. On the other hand, I've got experts who've got no idea telling me it's extinct, and a whole heap of 30-second Facebook opinions, but there's not one reason why it can't be there. Why would I pick that one? It doesn't make any sense. It's not logical. So I'll believe it's extinct when someone shows me proof that it's extinct, or give me a logical reason to believe it. Now the second question to answer, the second question within that is, could these people who claim to have seen a thylacine be mistaken? Could they be wrong? They're honest enough, but humans can make mistakes, so can they be wrong? And the answer is yes. But every one of them, 1,500 sighting reports, every one of them's wrong? A lot of people see Bigfoot or the Loch Ness Monster, but this is obviously different. The thylacine did exist to recent times. We got film of it walking around in a zoo. It did exist. Is it really so impossible that a small remnant of the species could still exist somewhere in remote Tasmania? Is that so impossible? When you think about it, particularly when you walk there, it's perfectly logical that it could. Now, a recent world-class scientific study has asked that main question: could these people be wrong? It's been scientifically studied. Every available sighting report was assessed and ranked by Professor Barry Brook and his dedicated team at the University of Tasmania, with a lot of other associates working with him as well. They use established global methods to analyse the sighting reports, and that had never been done before. Now, these researchers concluded that there's a small chance the thylacine could still exist. That's the last word. I sighted 2 thylacines in 2002, now that's a fact. If it can happen to me, then it can happen to other people as well. I've also been asked, and I've asked it myself, of course, could I have been mistaken? Could I have been wrong? Did I see cats? Did I see dogs? Imagine the torment that I've had to go through over the years. 16 years I spent, after I sighted two thylacines, I spent 16 years at that place trying to prove the species exists. Often the only anchor that I had in the mud and the rain and the tears, the only anchor that I had was the fact that I'd seen two thylacines. Yeah, I saw them, it's a fact. But the question is, could I have been wrong? Now, sometimes I've answered that question by saying, no, I'm a scientist. Now, in other words, perhaps I made a more structured observation than the usual. What I actually meant by that is that most of the time, most people who make thylacine sighting reports are usually written off as unprofessional kooks. Expert scientists are saying it is extinct. So the assertion is that less expert people are seeing it on the way home from the pub or whatever. There's a lot of ridicule. Just about everybody who says they've seen a thylacine is ridiculed. They're a kook. Now I can fight that. Now I don't drink alcohol. I don't smoke anything. For what it's worth, I do have 2 degrees in ecology. So I am a scientist. I was there for the purpose of looking for the thylacine. It's a bit different to a normal sighting report, thylacine sighting report. That means I can fight the ridicule. I can stand up for any good person who's made a thylacine sighting report, because I know that it can happen. I was already looking for the thylacine for 4 years before I sighted it. And I was in northwest Tasmania for that purpose. So again, and there's various kinds of corroborating evidence from that exact place. As I said, I worked there for 16 years, so I found various kinds of evidence to suggest the thylacine's there, but none of it good enough to be proof. I don't know how, but it's the situation. So again, my sighting report's a little bit different to normal. It can't be brushed aside so easily. If I can see it, other people can see it as well. And we convict murderers on eyewitness testimony. If just one of those 1,500 sighting reports is correct, then we've got a job to do, particularly if it was recent. That means the thylacine's still out there. There's still a chance to save it. To summarise, what I can give you here is the most accurate, up-to-date assessment of whether the thylacine still exists or not as of January 2026. Now, what myself and others at the peak of this field can say is that there's a very real chance the thylacine still exists. It didn't go extinct in 1936, forget that. It almost certainly endured into the 1980s, perhaps to the 2000s, and there's still a small chance to save it now. No argument can prove that it's currently extinct. There is no argument that can prove that. And I've said that I've said so many times, I saw it in 2002. So personally, I know it existed to 2002. After that, I don't know what's happened, because I haven't been able to prove that it's there. Surely even the slightest chance is worth fighting for with this magnificent survivor. Please don't give up on the Tasmanian tiger.